comes out.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of my job. But at the time, I was just a site manager. So I was managing projects.
Okay.
And we did a project on the River Lee,
Oh, wow.
which is not that far from Stamford Hill.
Yes, I know.
But
There's like,
I didn't even know Stamford Hill existed.
okay.
I had no idea. Quite early in my stay. So we had to secure a place to work from.
Yeah. I'm just gonna do this while I'm listening. I'm gonna.
It's all of our kit is floating,
Yeah.
so we need to secure a place on the bank
Yeah.
where we can take them out off the bar.
That's like where they have canoes going there on the.
On
Yeah.
the lorries on the wagons. So we identify a location where there is a warehouse. Are we going to the site to see who's there? There wasn't much internet on the days, you couldn't just pick it up and the internet and stuff.
Right.
We're going to see who is there. And try and secure a deal so we can work there for 2 or 3 weeks. So we're turning up, and this guy is from Stamford Hill, proper.
Yes, with the payout.
Working, so they're driving with forklifts, and they're not. It's not
Right.
illegal or anything. Proper.
Yes, the religious people work as well.
Working in a warehouse, were like a glass warehouse.
Yeah.
That far away from person anyway. So we start talking to them about renting a place, and they say, look, we just work here, we need to talk
Mm.
to the boss. Well, okay, I'll talk to the boss, and I said to for my colleagues, it was really difficult, they didn't know what kind of work they were falling into,
Right.
you know? But I was kind of familiar, and I looked at them and said, okay, well, I'll meet the boss, but when can I meet the boss? He said, phone number. No. So they gave me phone number, I told him the phone, said, look, that is all fine, we need to sign an agreement. I said to him, sign an agreement. He said, okay, well, come to my house. And we signed the agreement.
Wow.
So I just follow the sat nav to get to his house.
Before you know it, you're in Bnei Brak.
Hi.
Hi, Rena.
Okay. Stop video. Okay.
Right.
That's amazing. I covered 3 times the sound of yours.
Yeah.
Absolutely full.
Amazing. How many years ago is this?
Then
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Okay. So today, one of my stops, I have usually when I go to North London, I don't go just for one thing. I have a list of places I need to go. So one of the places I went was actually one of these warehouses. Because I picked up now a whole bunch of matzah shmura, which I'm going to give you after the shira tonight. Maybe it was the same place. Yeah.
The bosses.
So maybe it's even the same place. Who knows?
Is it a glass warehouse?
It's like an industrial estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the bank of the on the bank of the river?
Oh, not exactly on the bank. No, they could
No.
not exactly on. Sorry, Microsoft PowerPoint. This one.
Well, it was obviously
Sorry.
right on the bank of the canal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big.
So I bought some really nice wine glasses, and then they gave me a national one
Amazing.
and told me to have measurement. Well, so I find some falafel and some dogs, a proper place to buy stuff. And then during lots of other works in the same area, I used to go there and bring hummus and pita and bogalas to the guys at work.
Amazing. And they're like, hey, this is good stuff. Kosher stuff. Hello, Monique. So Monique, you joined on the Zoom. Baruch Hashem, you managed to join. Can you
Can
hear
you
me?
hear me?
Yes. Hi, Monique.
Can you
It's
hear
good
me?
to have you on the Zoom at least.
Yeah. Hello, Yossi. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not feeling 100%. So I thought I would be joining you, but at least today I'm on the video.
Yes.
That's okay. Thank you, Yossi.
Yeah. Just gonna see. Oh, yes. Yaron is coming. Okay, great. Yaron is coming, and Cyril will be there. So just gonna wait another 2 minutes. Meanwhile, just going to bring a siddur. I'm going to do.
What's your name? My name is Miriam. You? Oh,
Yes. Avi, you want a tea or something? No, you good?
Just a, oh,
Just a cup for the, yeah.
so it's only two of us, so,
No, there's 2 more people coming.
there's
2 more people coming, and Deborah said she wasn't feeling well,
oh,
so she said she will be joining on the Zoom as well. Hello, Yael.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Do you have any family in Israel in the heavy hit places?
No, well, all good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just speaking to Rina before, Rina who's on the line here, who unfortunately has family in Arad. Is it Arad? The
Yeah, in Dimona in Arad, but it was Arad that was heavily hit, and both my cousins lost their homes.
oh,
So one of them is the house that my aunt first got when she moved to Arad. It was newly built, so it's 50 plus years. A lot of memories there, and but Baruch Hashem, nobody died.
okay.
Baruch Hashem, that's the main thing.
It's just the rubble. That's it. They lost everything, but who cares? They have their life, and everybody's Baruch Hashem. They can still do Pesach. That's all everybody's thinking about right now is where we're going to do Pesach.
no idea how they do this.
Yeah.
That's the good
So-
part.
Over 100 homes, I think.
Wow. Wow.
So I used to live in the kibbutz where someone got killed this morning.
No.
Really? Okay. Okay, Shner, you're gonna go to mommy now? Okay. Shner, how much each of you can take one of these and you go up to mama. Yeah. Yeah, take it. You want to take one of these or a crisps? Which one? Which one do you want? Take that and go upstairs to mommy now. Hey. Take that. You want Wasser? You want Wasser? Water in Yiddish.
I know a little Yiddish.
Wasser.
I know a little bit of Yiddish.
Okay, Shner, take this and go upstairs to mommy. You also want Wasser?
My grandparents were talking Yiddish
You want Wasser?
to each other.
Take that and go upstairs to mommy.
Need another cup? It's my
Hey, it's enough. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, I picked good night as well.
Yeah. Everything here on this table is kosher for Passover. We already started cleaning. We're almost, yeah.
It's early.
What?
It's early. It's more than a week, isn't it?
I know, but we have a lot of work, a lot of cooking to do. You know, my family is all coming from America for Passover. My parents and my siblings are all going to be here. We're hosting them. So,
So are you now on Pesach dishes?
no, not yet, but it's a transition stage. So, you know, we start also with the little kids, you know, they carry the crumbs across the whole house. So if they eat in one place, it's, you know, it extends everywhere.
But then you go with a candle. and
Yeah,
light
that's
it.
yes, we do that. Yeah, the night before
And a feather.
Yeah. B'dikat chametz, yeah. So just gonna wait another minute while for the last people to come. In the meantime, I told Rina I'm going to say a prayer for all the wounded people in Israel and for their speedy recovery. We're thinking of them and everyone
Most
should
of them are children, Rabbi.
yeah, it's very devastating. It's a difficult day for all of us, a difficult night. Hello, Yaron. Hello, Cyril. Ah, perfect. So I'm going to now read the custom is when we want to make a prayer for someone's recovery, specifically like a sick person who to get better. There's a specific chapter in Psalms in Tehillim, chapter 20, which is it's a designated special chapter to say. So I'm just going to say it now in Hebrew together and we can all answer Amen. Lam natseach mizmor leDavid. Yancha dinei b'imtzari sagevcha shem leheyakim. Yishlach ezrecha mikodesh mitzir yisadeka. Yizker kol ben chesecha va'ilos chedash nesela yiten lachach levavecha v'chol atzascha yimali. Nirana nabi shosecha uv'shem elehinu nitkol yimali Adonai kol mishalisecha. Ata yadaiti ki hoshia Adonai Mashiach yaneu mishmei kotche begvura seisha yemine. Ele varecha ve'ele vasusa v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu nasker heima kar v'nafalo v'anachnu kamra v'nesedod Adonai hoshia hamelech yanenu v'yom karenu. Amen. Everyone should be safe and all the people, the wounded people should recover, complete recovery speedily, and everyone should be safe and sound.
Amen.
Okay. So I'm just going to close the door. Cyril and Yaron, if you want to open up this up to a tea or a coffee or something.
I'm good with photographs.
What?
I'm good with
You're
photographs.
good. Okay. I have your book. So this is the last week 6. And the topic of today is kind of, we're going to wrap the bow on everything that we learned until now. The topic is life is short-ish. And if you remember, we opened up the course in the very beginning of the first week saying that even though this is a course about death and the afterlife, but in Judaism, really, it's not just about, oh, let's philosophize and theorize about what happens after we die, after 120, we should all live long lives. But all of this information actually has an effect on our current lives as well. And it's actually interesting. I was just in the car now as I was driving. I was just driving now back a very long drive from North London. I was thinking about it that, you know, a cemetery is a place where you bury people, right? And now, how do you say a cemetery in Hebrew?
Oh,
Bet Kvarot, right? Which means literally the house of... Oh, very good. So the Bet Kvarot means the house of graves. But there's other terms, actually. We customarily, tradition, we don't, even though the literal name is Bet Kvarot, but we call it Bet Almin or Bet HaChayim, which means the house of the living, or Bet Almin, which means the house of the worlds. Almin is Olamot in Aramaic, which means worlds in plural, which means this world and the afterworld is sort of the place where the two worlds come together and merge together. And as we learned in the either the first or the second, I think it was the second lesson, that the soul has 5 levels, and from the 5 levels, the lowest level called the nefesh remains in the grave, right? And it's the ruach, the other higher levels that actually go up to heaven. So when you're going to visit a gravesite, it's not just the body, the soul, one of the levels of the soul is still there. And when you go to visit them, you can actually communicate with them, and the soul feels your visit when you come to visit. They feel your presence. That's why it's good you come there and you make a prayer. And we have a very beautiful custom as well. Before we have a very big milestone in life, like for example, marrying off a child or our own wedding or something like that, we go to the cemetery of our deceased parents or grandparents, and we invite them spiritually to come and attend the wedding.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah. And it says that by the chuppah, by the wedding, it says up to 3 generations of previous generations come their souls to attend the wedding. So now the purpose of this lesson is basically to answer the question is everything that we learned, how does that affect the way we actually live? That's the topic of today. So you can open up to page 210. Exercise 6.1. You've almost completed the journey. So the journey of the soul, the journey into Judaism's approach to death, afterlife, reincarnation. Take a moment to identify 3 ways that the perspective we gain can influence one's life and its daily realities. So I'd like to just change one word here. Instead of saying, like in the abstract, how to influence one's life, how about our life? So this is a sort of a question. It's more of a introspective question of, from everything that we learned up until now, what do you think, in what way can that influence the way we actually live on a daily basis? Does anybody want to share any thoughts? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, it feels like you should be putting together with the rest of the Jewish community to fulfill specifically the things that you need to fulfill.
So it's a team effort. It's a team. This is going back to last week when we learned about the reincarnation, right? Well, let me bring you back to the very beginning. This was the first week we spoke in the beginning. The topic of the first lesson was about confronting the fear of death. That typically many people, there's a word for it. It's called thanatophobia, which means the fear of death. And there's a whole body of psychology which was built around how people cope with the impending fear of death. And many people, the way they cope with the fear of death is they sort of deny, they live in denial and avoidance. Everyone knows that it's the eventuality, it's something that's going to happen. It's not a secret, everyone knows it, but sort of it makes us uncomfortable, so we choose not to think about it, to sort of push it down the road. We'll come to think about it later. Maybe when after retirement or after when we're on the deathbed. Then we'll think about it. But now we don't have time to really think about it, and it's an uncomfortable feeling, and it causes many people who live that way to either when something is real but you're not able to embrace it, then it's like a heavy thing that's sort of in the back of our mind or somewhere in our chest, and every now and then when you hear someone that passes away or this and that, or when COVID hits or this and that and the other, it affects us in many ways. And one of what we spoke about in the first lesson was that the Jewish approach really takes the whole thing and flips it on the head. And it says, instead of looking at death as this sort of, why is death such a scary thing? Because it's the dead end. Every other challenge in life, it's a challenge which you can overcome. And then there's the after. If you lose a job, okay, so it's hard for a couple months, but then, you get another job. If someone's sick, so you're sick eventually, and then either you get well or you cope with it. But death is the type of thing where, unlike everything else, it's the end. There is no after. And that is a very, very scary feeling.
But you don't need to deal with it.
We don't have to deal with it, but in the now, in other words, after it happens, we don't have to deal with it. But now we're worried, like, what happens if we die tomorrow? Like, it's a very scary feeling, right? No one knows when we're going to die. It could be it could happen any day. In fact, it says there was this is in the appendix of see if I can find it.
With every other issue in life you have to deal with this one.
We don't have to deal with it after it happens, right?
Other people have to deal with
Other people have to deal with it. Yes.
it.
Just thinking if I can find this one. There was a rabbi who said that, I'm trying to see if I can find the source. It was in one of the appendix here.
I'm very worried about that.
You're not worried about that. Good. And That was the
Is anyone worried about death, or is it calling for attention? Do you?
Yeah.
Really?
So there was a rabbi who said in the Talmud, he said you should repent the day before you die. So his students asked him,
What?
repent, tshuva,
What? Oh, okay.
lasot tshuva, to
That's
return to God.
why-
So his students asked him, well, we don't know when we're going to die. So he's like, that's exactly the point. So every day you should repent because maybe tomorrow you're going to die. So you have to live every day as if it might be your last day, right? So what was the Jewish approach? We flipped the whole thing upside down. We said the whole thing about death is that, if you view death, if you view life as the physical body is life. So when the physical body dies, then it's the end. And then finished. And then, it depends if you believe in the afterlife, right? But we started by defining, saying who is the real me in Judaism. And according to Kabbalah, if you remember, we learned about how God put the soul into Adam. We said the real me is the soul, and the soul doesn't die. The soul lives on, and the body is really only a container for the soul, and the soul is more blissful in heaven. That's where it can fully express itself and fully live and be. In the body, it's limited. So when you think about that, then death isn't as scary because it's really not the end of life. It's just the transition from one life to another life. And that's, remember the story you said about the previous Rebbe when the communist put a gun to his head and he said, I'm not scared of it because you guys, you have one life and two gods. We have one God and two lives. So this doesn't scare me. And with that, he was able to look at death in the eyes, not because we embrace death like other religions do potentially. No, we value life more important than everything. In fact, we would desecrate the Shabbat and we would desecrate anything just to preserve a life, because life is the most important thing. But at the same time, we know that life.
Even to another Jewish person.
Exactly. Yeah. So the soul is the real me, which is eternal. The body is a temporary container for the soul, and the soul experiences great pleasure back in its natural habitat. So when we have that, then it's kind of like a gift in a way, because now we're not so scared of death. It's not so scary after all, because it's really just a continuation of what was there before. And the meaningful parts of our life remain. The parts of our life that are superficial, if you had a Ferrari or those things, that's not gonna, you can even bury that in the grave, but that doesn't live on. But the meaningful things that we did, that lives on, because spirituality doesn't die when the body dies. It remains with the soul. So when we're able to embrace death, then we have another gift, which is what we're going to again talk about in today's lesson, which is kind of giving you all a gift, because you guys came for 6 weeks and you did this whole course. We get to have a gift, which is now that we could look at death and we can embrace it, we can then, by contemplating our mortality, there are certain things, benefits that we can get, psychological and in many and others as well, by not having to live in denial about death. And we're gonna explore what some of those might be. So exercise 6.2, can you identify any benefits to occasionally contemplate our own mortality? If you can think of any, what would you think would be a benefit? In some place, there's in other religions, it's a very big emphasis. In Buddhism, for example, and what is it called? Stoicism, where they very much think about death. But there's even like this chart. I've seen someone do it, but it's like where they say like the average lifespan is, I don't know, what's the average lifespan, X amount of years. And they will basically hang up in their office or in their room, like almost like a chart with the amount of days that are left. Obviously, you don't know exactly when you're going to die, but if you just go based on the average, and every day they cross off one, and you see, so you start off, I'm already 34, right? So you cross off to get up to the current date, and then you can see where you are, and it's almost like a bit scary when you see like I've already gone through this amount, and life isn't infinite. We tend to think it's infinite because day goes, a day passes, time just carries on. but really it's not. It is finite. And by realizing that, what benefits does it give us? So it's an open-ended question.
What is Tchiyat HaMetim?
We're going to talk about that today, later. So we'll open up with text 1 on page 211. Miriam, do you want to read?
There is no exercise or reflection as potent, perhaps, as contacting one's ending. In confronting our own passing, we are better able and more willing to help others see the power of awareness of that which is inevitable, death, helping us wake up to the tender colors of life and personal creation. In contemplating our own end, we recognize that there is still time for life, in whatever time is left. Values are there to be lived until that last inevitable moment. To acknowledge this is free.
So the word here that stuck out to me was, it's somewhat of like a wake-up call. So when we think, when we, on a day-to-day basis, life is busy and we get on with it. But by coming to this course, one of the gifts that we have is that we're giving ourselves is that we think we have time to think about the things that we don't usually think about. And one of them being that eventually we're going to die. And by thinking about that, it's a wake-up call for the life that we have and the value of the life that we have, because it's not forever. It is finite. And acknowledging that is freeing in a way. It's freeing, first of all, knowing, this is from a psychological standpoint. This text is from a secular book. But now we're going to look from a Torah perspective to see what are the benefits to occasionally, not like on a day-to-day basis. So it's not exactly the same as in Stoicism or other philosophies where there is actually an app here. You can see here on the screen. It's an app which actually got, during its peak time, it got millions and millions of downloads. And the app is called WeCroak. And if you sign up for the app, you have to pay 99 cents. You'll get on your phone a reminder 5 times a day with different quotes about death. Can you imagine? It's a bit morbid, right? Would you sign up for such an app? I don't know. No, right? But but people do. And so, but from a Jewish standpoint, we'll see it's a little bit different. It's not something that we should really be contemplating all the time, because it could be a bit morbid and a bit depressing. But it is good once in a while, which is, I guess, what we're doing here, once in a while, to just get that shake-up realization. And sometimes it happens when like a loved one passes away. Like that's the shake-up, that's the wake-up call, right? So here's a quote. It's based on a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim, which is very cryptic when you read this verse. So text 2a. Would you like to read, Cyril?
Be agitated and do not sin. Verbalize within your hearts, upon your beds, and forever silent. And be forever silent.
So what does that mean? It's very hard to understand what that means. The literal, remember last week we learned that every passage in the Torah has 4 layers of meaning. The pardes, the pshat, the simple meaning, the remez, the hints, the drush is the expanded explanation, and then the sod, which is the mystical. So everything has different layers. So here's a good example. You have a verse in Tehillim, in Psalms. The simple meaning of this verse is King David had a lot of enemies in his lifetime. And a lot of the Tehillim, the Psalms, the prayers that he said, which he then wrote in the books, was him praying for his own life, praying about his enemies and about the hardships that he was going through. So this is one example where he's saying, be agitated and do not sin, verbalize within your heart. So he's speaking about his enemies, and he's saying that they should basically think inside their hearts and all the lies that they were basically slandering. They were, let's say in the olden days, it was like they didn't have the media, but imagine like nowadays, when the media will go and sort of lie about a person and give them a bad name and in a slanderous way. So that's what they were doing to King David. So he was saying that they should basically contemplate to themselves what they're doing and the lies that they were spreading about him, and be forever silent. In other words, they should realize they should stop saying their lies and they should be quiet. That's the literal. Hi, Paul. Nice to have you here. No, he's saying about his enemies who were saying lies about him. So he is praying to Hashem that his enemies should basically like contemplate what they're doing wrong and then be quiet and stop saying the lies about him. That's the literal meaning of this verse. But it's very cryptic. You read it, it's hard to understand. The Talmud comes and gives another layer of understanding, which is, again, like we said, the drush, the expanded meaning, the deeper meaning of the verse. And this is something which applies to all of us. So it starts off. So, Cyril, you can continue reading verse, the next text 2b on page 213.
Agitate our good inclination against our evil inclination, as it is stated, be agitated and do not sin. If this vanquishes the evil inclination, all is good. But if not, we shall occupy ourselves with Torah study, as it is stated, verbalize Torah teachings until they enter within your hearts. If this vanquishes it, all is good. But if not, we shall recite the Shema, as it is stated, upon your beds. If this vanquishes it, all is good. But if not, we shall remind ourselves of the day of death, as it is stated, and be forever silent.
So let me explain what this means. So the verse, if you look on 2a, has 4 parts to the verse. Each one is a different level. The first one, be agitated and do not sin. So you're familiar with the concept that every person has a Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. We have a good inclination and an evil inclination, which means we have a part of us that wants to be constructive and wants to be giving and selfless to others and do the right thing and get up in the morning, right? And then there's a part of us that wants to sleep in all day, scroll on our phone and do nothing and be selfish and do all. So we have different parts to us. So in the classic Jewish books, it's called the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination and the good inclination. So what he's saying is that a person should always, so when we have those sort of that inner struggle, we shouldn't just go with the flow and see whatever happens. No, we should try to make the good inclination win over the evil inclination. So when we wake up in the morning and the alarm clock rings, instead of hitting snooze, do the hard thing, get out of bed. That's just like one example. But whatever it is, to always have that discipline to follow the good inclination to be stronger than the evil inclination. So that's what we should do. The question is, sometimes we have negative tendencies that sometimes maybe it comes out as depression, or sometimes we're just having a bad day. And sometimes we feel like it's just the scale is sort of being tipped in the other side. And we turn, what should we do? So King David gives us, he says, there's a formula. What's the formula? So that if it doesn't work, if you're having a bad day, so the first thing is just try to do the right thing. If that doesn't work, then the second part, it says, verbalize within your hearts. What is imru bilvavchem? Verbalize within your hearts. What does that mean? Study Torah. As it says, that refers to the study of Torah, because it says about the Torah in the Shema that we say Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. We should speak the words of Torah in your heart, right? The words on your heart. So why? Because when you study Torah is actually very interesting. Torah, it's an intellectual pursuit. We're studying now, right? We're studying, we're learning, but it also has a spiritual potency, a spiritual element that when you study Torah, because it's the wisdom of God, when you study Torah, it actually uplifts a person spiritually. It can help you. It's not just, it's unlike studying other topics of, when you study science or the maths or the physics. When you study Torah, you're studying God's wisdom, not just human wisdom. And by doing that, it uplifts a person and it gives you strength for the good inclination to overpower the evil inclination. So it says, if you can't do it, turn to study of Torah. But then sometimes that doesn't work either. Why? Because when we're studying Torah, it's an intellectual thing. And because of that, there is a chance that our ego gets, like when we're learning and we feel good about it and we feel good about ourselves, how much we're accomplishing and we're understanding and how smart we are, that can lead a person to be self-aggrandizing, right? Ego. you know, learning, if you're learning in the proper way, it can bring a person to, you know, to be more humble and to, you know, and do the right thing. But sometimes, but it's not a given. It's possible. Yeah, you can have people who study all day the Talmud, and yet in their day-to-day life, you look at them, they're not necessarily kinder people or better people, right? It's not a given. It's not an automatic, because since when you study, it's possible that it can be done in a way of where it's just being used to sort of build your ego.
That's why you should not, yeah.
So it says, so if that doesn't work, then you need to go to prayer, to say the Shema on your bed, because the mitzvah of saying Shema is once in the morning and once at night, either on your bed or before you go to bed, the mitzvah of saying Shema, b'shachpacha uvekumecha. So over here, the next part of the verse where it says upon your bed is referring to the Shema. What is the first verse of Shema? We speak about the oneness of God. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, how God is one. When we contemplate about that, we think about the one, how really everything is one, everything is united. It's all here. Everything is here from God, including myself. It helps us sort of get out of ourself into thinking about, you know, there's something bigger. There's a God. There's a purpose, and it gives us a sense of humility.
By the way,
So that's the next weapon.
you say about waking up early,
Yeah.
and the Tehillim, David HaMelech, and also the Talmud. In the Talmud, there is a page about waking up, and when kings waking up, and David
Yes.
HaMelech waking up. This is fascinating.
Things sleeping a bit longer than the average man.
Yeah, Talmud, and David HaMelech will wake up before even the nation.
Right. It says, I will wake up the dawn, and the dawn won't wake me up. Meaning he woke up before dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, and so the first weapon is, you know, just try to do the right thing. If that doesn't work, study Torah. If that doesn't work, say the Shema. And if that doesn't work, what's the last resort? Remember the day of death. That's the last resort, because when you remember the day of death, it's sort of it's pushes you back into it's a focus. Yeah. So over here, we see from here that remembering the day of death. And it's interesting that this is the last resort, which the commentaries explain. If that's the most powerful one, then why don't we just start with that to begin with? Why is that? First do this. If that doesn't work, then do this. If that doesn't work, then do that. And then if that doesn't work, then remember the day of death. Why don't we just begin with remembering the day of death? So the commentaries say, because thinking about our mortality, it's sort of, you know, when you take a medication, sometimes it can be side effects. So over here also, it's very powerful, but it has side effects. Side effects.
Side effects in every medication.
We won't go there.
Have them or not,
Yes.
different. But every medication is a drug, and every drug.
Right. So over here, what we're saying is thinking about our mortality is so strong, but the side effect is that right, is that it could be depressing, right? If we think about it all the time. So we're saying that's why it says occasionally in the Jewish view. Occasionally to think about death, not 5 times a day, occasionally.
Every drug in the pharma doesn't heal you. The side effect makes it a bit better.
So now, what are the potential benefits of thinking about our mortality? So number 1, it helps us prioritize and retain focus. Number 2, avoid foolish mistakes. Seize and embrace every moment. Live life more fully. And life is more meaningful, not just functional.
So everything here is spiritual. It's not like
Psychological?
this is also spiritual.
Yeah.
I mean physical, like you mentioned a Ferrari.
Yeah, so what about it?
Like having fun in this world, rather like
No.
physical fun, or
No.
this is the.
On the contrary, we'll speak about that soon. There's
This topic speaks on the spiritual stuff rather than
living a life
stuff
of
like-
meaning, but living a life of more of meaning.
Yeah, this is obviously, but live life more fully.
It doesn't mean so let me explain. Live life more fully means
Like having children and passing.
Yes,
knowledge to the
exactly.
children. Okay.
like leaving a legacy, for example, you know, doing things that will have an impact on others. But there is a concept which is very different than this, and I'm glad you brought it up. There's
I had such a big topic.
Yeah. I'm sure none of you, this is sort of the Gen Z generation, you know, there's a concept called YOLO. YOLO stands for you only live once. Or I'm sure you heard of the concept called the bucket list, right? So what's the bucket list? is before we're going to kick the bucket, which is a term for like dying, before we're going to kick the bucket. Who's here? I like the slide. Yeah, Deborah, we're so happy to have you here. Deborah is your daughter is not feeling well, so she's joining us on the Zoom. We missed your physical presence. So the concept of the bucket list is, before we kick the bucket, let's make a bucket list. The average person's bucket list, what are the types of things listed on the bucket list? Usually material things, right? Places that you need to visit and different attractions we need to do. And that really stems from an idea of like, because life is, going to end at one point, so it doesn't really matter. So like, who cares? Yalla. In Hebrew, they say yalla, right? We're anyways going to die. So like, is it Arabic? Yeah, yalla? Okay. If we're anyways going to die, then like, who cares? Let's just live the life to the fullest. So that's what you were mentioning. That's like the Ferrari and the bucket list and the YOLO. But over here, we're saying really the opposite of that. We're saying is that life is precious. Every minute is precious. So therefore, do things that will have a lasting impact. There is a really beautiful story of it.
You're not for going fishing.
Go fishing for the memories, but for the relationship. You went fishing today with Yuda, right? I know everything. So you're building a relationship with a good friend. You're doing something. You're building memories, right? So that sort of thing we're thinking about. We're going to touch upon this also in the end. Is that everything has the spiritual and the physical. So going fishing, take that as an example.
Do I have it here?
There is, no, I saw Merav this morning. So there is catching the fish, and doing it for the physical pleasure. And then there's the experience. There's the experience, the memories, the relationship building with the person that you're doing it. That's the spiritual element of it. Food. We have some food here on the table, right?
In a way, I'm trying to convince him to do Aliyah and to go and live Yehuda or Shomron and to get Giva.
Okay.
Maybe also Zungalach, if it comes with it.
Yeah, there is a beautiful story
So
of.
I also preached in Torah
Good.
today.
You see?
We see it's
Yeah. There is a very beautiful story. Yeah.
Huh?
Well,
I'm a good Chabadnik.
absolutely. Everyone is a Chabadnik.
Torah.
You saw the video that I posted about what is Chabad? I posted it on the WhatsApp group.
Long time ago.
You didn't see it? You're not on the WhatsApp group. You don't do WhatsApp groups. I posted it a few weeks ago on the WhatsApp
The
group.
beginning of the.
It's a beautiful compilation. Anyway, that's aside getting distracted. So there's a beautiful story. I'm sorry I forget all the details, but it was Sir Rothschild. He was a very famous, rich Jew who lived a few hundred years ago, and he was the one who actually
By the way, it's probably not Jewish, but still.
the original Rothschild. Maybe it was someone else. I don't even remember who it was. There was some rich Jew who lived in England a few hundred years ago. And he was one time meeting with the king or queen of the British Empire. I'm sorry, I forget all the names. And the queen asked him, "Sir, how much are you worth?" So he said a number. He said, "I'm worth $500,000." The queen said, "You're royal. I'm sorry, but I heard you're worth a lot more than that." So he answered. He said, "You didn't ask me how much money I have in the bank account. You asked how much I'm worth. For me, my money, it comes one day, it can be gone the next. It's not real, it's not mine. You ask me how much I'm worth. For me, my worth is the charity that I gave, because that stays forever. The charity that I gave, that mitzvah will be with me in this world and in the next world. My money doesn't come with me to the grave. So you asked me how much I'm worth, so I told you the amount of money that I gave for charity in my lifetime, and that's $500,000. That's how much I'm worth. So here is actually, you may have heard that this is another famous person who was Alfred Nobel, who was the founder of the Nobel Prize.
And why is the founder of the Nobel Prize? Because what Time magazine?
Yeah, so we're going to see this right now. So this is a famous story, as you know, and this is a story that sort of brings to life.
Explosive.
Yeah, exactly. So this is so we're going to see the story now.
Dynamite, from the ancient Greek term for power, is a potent material indeed. But a person can hardly encounter a more powerful motivator to plan for his day of death than the opportunity to read his own obituary in the media. Alfred Nobel was a 19th century Swedish chemist and engineer with 350 different patents. He owned 90 factories that manufactured armaments and was the inventor of dynamite. His brothers Ludwig and Robert Nobel were tycoons with oil fields along the Caspian Sea. Alfred invested in his brother's enterprise and he grew ever wealthier. Then, in 1888, Ludwig Nobel died suddenly while on a visit to Cannes, France. The passing of one of the Nobel magnates was exceptionally newsworthy. In their haste to hammer out the headlines, the French newspapers misidentified the deceased, mistakenly reporting that Alfred Nobel had died. Alfred was shocked to read of his own passing. He was deeply disturbed at the far from flattering obituaries. Bold black headlines screamed, "The Merchant of Death is dead." The fine print was no better. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Alfred was sobered by an experience afforded few. Is this how I will be remembered when my time comes, he wondered? Will I be forever tainted as the Merchant of Death? Historians speculate that Alfred, determined to improve his genuine obituary by improving his lasting effect on humanity, took steps while still hale and hearty to ensure that mankind would remember him as an everlasting contributor to the advance of civilization and quality of life. On November 27, 1895, Alfred Nobel signed his last will and testament, designating 94% of his vast fortune to the creation of the Nobel Prizes. To this day, his name is synonymous with the advance of science, medicine, literature, and world peace. All it took to transform a merchant of death into an angel of progress and peace was a moment of serious reflection on mortality and its consequences.
This is a very sweet version to make
Oh, yeah.
very, very good person. But I must say, this is one of the most evil person in the world. Even though the Nobel Prize is made so the science will be ruled by Rockefeller and forever, like all the real science of the Rambam, of the real healing purposes in life, he took away with the Nobel Prize together with Rockefeller.
Right. I guess the point of the story is
Yeah, the point is different.
the point is different. The point is for us to, when we think about, Miriam, do you want to just move over a little bit? And yeah, just like that. And Cyril, if you could just move over.
Anyway, other patterns is how to make people suffer while they getting into
Are you being
bed.
political here?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're, so again, the gift that we have, hopefully one thing that we can take away from this whole course is that the concept of dying isn't as scary. It's something which we can embrace. We know that there is the afterlife, and there's even the relationships that we have continue as well, both on the side of if we're living the relationships with our loved ones who passed away, and knowing that after we pass away, we can still retain a relationship with our loved ones. All those things are somewhat comforting. However, on the contrary, if a person is avoiding mortality, then it leads to a life of just, who cares?
And suffering.
So focuses on selfish desires and aspirations.
Corona, you wouldn't leave your house. And then you actually suffocate yourself. You don't get vitamin D.
Right.
And so on and so on.
Right.
If you're afraid of life, you actually suffocate yourself. You should live in happiness. Right? Besimchat tamid.
Yes.
I just ordered a bottle from Amazon.
So
But
Mhm.
in alcohol?
Bottle of vitamin D tablet.
focuses, so time is dispensable, procrastination, disconnection from what life is truly about, and distraction from our true mission. Now, if you turn to the appendix on page 236, there was a Australian nurse who she worked in palliative care, which is like end-of-life care to alleviate pain. And she worked there for a number of years, and she ended up writing a book about the experiences that she had and interviewing the people who are, we have a sense of clarity when we're on the deathbed, all of a sudden what really matters becomes clear and that sort of thing. So here's a very powerful section from her diary, which eventually I think she published into a book. So whose turn? Yaron, would you like to read?
Yeah, a palliative nurse who has
Counsel.
is dying in the last life has revealed the most common regrets we have at the end of our lives. And among the top, for men in particular, is we wish I hadn't worked so hard. Bronnie?
Yeah.
Bronnie Ware?
Yeah.
Is an Australian nurse who spent several years working in palliative care, caring for patients in the last 12 weeks of their lives. She recorded their dying epiphanies in a blog called Inspiration and High, which gathers so much attention that she put her observation into a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Where writes of the phenomenal clarity of vision that people gain at the end of their lives and how we might learn from their wisdom. When questioned about any regrets they had or anything they would do differently, she says, common themes surfaced again and again. The top 5 regrets of the dying, as witnessed by Ware. Number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Wow.
Two more.
I know this is all false.
Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. Wow.
Yeah, what's false?
I know that this is all false because it was written in the Guardian, February the 1st, 2012.
Yeah. But it was published in her. This was published eventually in her. I believe she published a book, right? She wrote a book which was published by Penguin. So that redeems it. But the point over here isn't actually what
It was just a second. When I was a little boy, I walked with my grandfather in Tel Aviv, and I saw a homeless person. And I said to myself, to my grandfather, "Look at him. He's so happy." He was like very happy. Look, he's happy. So he's got everything.
You remind me of an amazing story. I'm probably going to kill the story, but it's a really powerful story. There was a rich guy who basically his whole entire life, he was a workaholic and he pursued money and wealth to no limits. No family, no friends, everything else was burned all the bridges. All he had was one-track minded, building wealth. And he was somewhere, he was on vacation and he saw 2 men going fishing. So he asked them, why are you going fishing? So they said, we're going fishing where, no, sorry. So he said to them, thank you, Avi. Why don't you tell us? You tell us the story. You can catch a fish and sell it. And then if you sell it, you can sell another fish. And then you can hire more people to buy more boats that can catch more fish. And then you can build up a whole company that will have, hundreds of boats that will catch fish. And then with all of that money, you'll be able to retire and go on the beach with your friend and go fishing. So they said, okay, well, we're already doing that. So what's the, why do all of that? We're already doing, right. So the point over here isn't what those the five specific things, regrets were that she observed. But the point is that when we think about our mortality, we can think about what are the things I'm going to want to be mentioned by my eulogy. When I pass away, what are the ways I'm going to want my family, my children, my loved ones to remember me as? What type of person do I want them to remember me as? That is a powerful thing. Now, so now we're going to sort of move into the next section, which is on page 215. 215. And this is perfect for Avi, because Avi, I know you like Hebrew, you like the source. This is a quote which it reads much better in Hebrew than in the English. So on page 215, so read it in the Hebrew. Now we're going to talk about, just to give an introduction to this next section, is that when we think about the fact that we're going to die eventually, all of a sudden what that means is that our time is more valuable and limited. The illusion of time being endless is shattered, right? So read text 3.
Okay. So, אדם דואג לליכוד דמיו, ואינו דואג לליכוד ימיו. דמיו אינם עוזרים, ימיו אינם חוזרים.
Tamav, you know what tamav means? Money.
Yeah.
So it says, Adam, it sort of, it rhymes in the Hebrew, but it means folks fret over the lost time and fail to fret over lost time, which means I'll spend 2 hours researching an item that I want to buy to see if I can save £3.
Yeah.
So they'll fret over not losing a dime, but not over losing time. And the reality is that it's really the opposite, because money, you lose money, but you can get it back. But your time, you can never get back, right? There is this, if I had to give you an ultimatum, okay, either you have to waste a day where you can't do anything, you just have to sit, twirl your thumb all day, or you have to pay me £1,000. Which one would you choose? Either you have to waste a day where you cannot do anything productive, you just have to sit and
You choose, make it 1 million.
Hey,
well,
you a million or you?
let me ask you the question the other way, a different way.
It was not a situation.
Let me ask you the question a different way. Which do you consider to be more valuable, your time or your money?
I think that is, there is no one straight answer to that.
But
Because, let me finish.
yes.
Because if you have no money, the answer is different
Mm-hmm.
to time.
Okay.
Because I preach to the guys at work, so go live your life. They said, well, I've got to work the weekend. I said, do you really have to work the weekend? You've got a family, you've got kids. Go see your kids, go live your life. But if you have no money at all,
Mm-hmm.
if you're on the bloodline, the answer is different. Then money is more important than time.
But if
Because
you're,
you have to feed your kids.
But if you know
Being
you-
with them when they're hungry
Okay.
does not give you.
But can't you use your time to make money?
Hmm?
You can use your time to learn a skill to be able to make money.
Whichever.
Or you can use your time however you want. By the way, anyone who's on the Zoom, Deborah and anyone else, feel free to unmute yourself and share. It's an open floor to anyone as well.
but the answer would change if you knew you were in the last week of your life. The answer-
Correct. Well, really, this is really, I'm leading to a follow-up question. The initial question, if you look on, most people, okay, so you gave, let's just say, to make this easier, that if you're homeless and whatever, then let's just say to make it, money is more important. But besides for that, most people would agree, what's more important, time or money?
Time.
Time.
Yeah.
So that's an easy question to answer. But here's a tricky question. Do we live our lives in a way that's aligned with that value? That's a bit trickier, because even though we tend to value time more than money, but we don't necessarily, well, I'll speak for myself, live that way all the time. you know,
So,
because I waste time, and clearly I won't waste money. I'm not going to take £100 bill and flush it down the toilet, but I'll do that to my time somehow. So why?
well, because we can't go straight to heaven, we need to live properly so to go to the heaven. So we do balancing.
Mhm.
We all life on this part of life, if you like.
Yeah, so we're not
is a
saying
set- is a set
that we need to live
com-
right.
So what you might say, that, so the king don't make compromises, but the rest of us have to compromise.
Right. So no one's saying that every single minute of our entire life has to be utilized, right? Because like you said, resting is also important. We have Shabbat for a reason. Resting and going on holiday and rejuvenate, regaining it, all that is important. But we're speaking more in a general sense. The idea of valuing our time, right? So there is a concept called fungibility.
Also in waste time, you sometimes have an idea.
But then it's not a waste. Then it's not waste. If you're
You're not initially thinking about the thing, it's just come up.
Right.
Like Hashem brings this, you don't know where it comes from.
Right.
Like,
But that's
but other people don't.
but you can't plan for, sometimes you're wasting time and something valuable comes out of it. Fine, but
Yeah.
that's not in our control. We're talking about focusing on our life and really taking control of our lives. And therefore, sometimes it is important, like Avi was saying, sometimes to let loose and not to every minute have to, but right. But even then, it's a choice.
Something,
Right.
Whether it's like a math question or something and you can't work it out, you say, okay, I'll leave it and I'll go and rest.
Right.
Then when you rest, you sometimes, oh, I didn't do this right. I should have done it from a different
Right.
angle or different perspective or something.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's true. Very often, when you're in the shower, the best ideas will come, right?
Yeah.
When you're taking a walk.
Yeah.
Right. So then you're doing those things with an intention, with a purpose, and then that is, again, it's different, right?
That is-
So what's the reason why, again, according to this Jewish proverb, right? Why we're saying that time is more important than money? Because money is what's called, in English, the word is fungible. Fungible means that if there's no real difference between $100 bill and another $100 bill. It's exchangeable. If I lose $100, it's not something that I can never get back. Because if I get another $100 bill, the other $100 bill is just as good as the previous one that I lost. Whereas time, it doesn't apply. If you lose a day, that day is never going to come back. And the tomorrow it's a different day. It's not the same as yesterday, and it cannot replace yesterday because each day is non-replaceable. To give another example,
special occasion,
right?
Something you miss for a friend or something, it will never come back.
Right. To give another example, which is a little bit more clear, children. Children are non-fungible. You can't just go and take your child and drop them off at the daycare, and then you come back and just give me any child, a child for a child. No, children, each child is different, is unique, and they're not exchangeable. So the same thing, money is exchangeable. So therefore, even no one's saying that money is not important. Money is very important. It runs the world. But the point is that money comes and goes. It flows. Whereas time, it goes and it doesn't come back. And so now, here's a very fascinating thing. In the beginning of time, if you read the Bible from the beginning, the story.
Think of it this way: would the homeless person be begging for money, or would he go and watch his daughter wedding, for example, if she invites him? He would stop begging for himself and will go to the wedding. Where you can say he's gonna have food at the wedding.
Right. So why, if that's the case, then why do people tend to care more about money than wasting time? Why is that a human tendency? So we'll go on to text 4, and we'll ask somebody from the Zoom. Would somebody from the Zoom like to read text 4? Monique, are you there?
Just unmute yourself.
Okay, Monique, would you like to read text 4 on page 216?
Yes. If not for a fear of the angel of death, what wrongs we would commit against our Father in heaven. Let us learn from the first 10 generations of humanity. God showered them with abundant paradise-like goodness, included centuries-long lifespans. Yet they were on the brink of destroying the world.
So this is actually after creation, for the first like 20 or so generations, people lived very long. You know how long Adam lived?
30?
Adam Arishon. How long did he live? 930 years. He was supposed to live 1,000 years, whole number. And he saw in prophecy that King David was supposed to die on the day he was born. He was supposed to be a stillborn. And he didn't, King David, he wanted him to live. So he said, I will gift 70 years to King David. And King David lived exactly 70 years. He was born and died on the same day on Shavuot, 70 years. And therefore, Adam Arishon lived 930 years, 1,000 minus 70. His wife.
In different generations. Huh?
Who? Yeah, different generations. But he knew, in prophecy. He saw that in the future, that King David would die. So anyways, but the point is, people lived very long. Noah it says he was 500 years old.
Creation.
Up until.
Which is like 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
almost 1,000.
Yes. So for the first 10 generations, from Adam Rishon till Noah, the flood, people lived for hundreds of years. The longest living person that we know that's in the Bible is Methuselah, or in Hebrew, Methuselah, who lived 969 years. And then other people that it's mentioned lived, a few hundred years. Now, what happened? Because of that, they lost the value of time, and they ended up self-destructing. And that's what led to the flood, the great flood, because people, the whole thing, like, what matter? Who cares? It's like it goes on and on and on and on. It's endless almost. So nothing really matters. And that's what it says, that if not for the fear of the angel of death, then, we would just live a very selfish and destructive and procrastination and all those things of being, time is dispensable, disconnecting from, the sense of having a true mission, because it's just so big that the whole thing becomes a bit irrelevant and we sort of lose focus. But then after that, sort of the time started decreasing to 120 years and 180, and then King David says in Psalms that a person lives 80 or 70 years. And in those times, that was the average lifespan. Then now with medicine and hygiene and stuff, it started increasing a little bit. But in a certain sense, that is a gift. The gift is when you know that there's a beginning and an end, it puts a frame on the whole life. And when we do that, then we realize that time is not, even though there's the illusion that it's sort of goes on and we have as much of it as we want. So when we're young people, like teenagers, for example, they have, they tend to take more risks than older people. The older you get, you become more risk averse. Why? Because teenagers, they don't really have sort of the sense of life and all that thing. For them, it's like, it's going to go on forever. The older you get, once you get into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, you start realizing and you get more clarity about life and the importance of life and how much of it we have and how we have to value it. We start being more cautious, more, and start putting value on things that are of real importance.
You wouldn't go fishing, though.
Yeah. Trying to find.
Maybe from the shore.
I don't go fishing anymore because there's no point. You don't catch any fish.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying to you that. Since the day we bought the fish.
Okay.
Right?
What's happening there? Okay, so we'll carry on to.
Is a potent material.
No. I'm looking for the meditation. I don't know why it's not in the slides. There's a very powerful meditation. I'll try to find it afterwards. We'll carry on now to text 5. there was in 2005 a Jewish boy who was diagnosed with cancer, and he started writing for himself a journal, a diary of his thoughts. And he published them as a blog. He was writing for himself and for his family. And eventually, 2 years later, he passed away, and his father published all of his diaries in a book. This is one quote, very, very powerful, from a 16-year-old boy. So pretty mature. So if I'll ask Deborah, would you like to read page 217? Text 5.
Did it work?
Now I hear you, yeah.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. This is
Sorry, no, we can't hear you. No, sorry, Deborah, we don't hear you. So I think your internet isn't great. So, well, I'm sorry, we'll have to ask someone else. Paul, would you like to read text 5? Yeah. I think you are mute. Paul? Can you hear us?
Maybe the speaker.
I think it's your sound is on the wrong, your audio is probably coming from the wrong. He's not on mute. This one, Paul, is not on mute. I think just your audio might be connected to a different, you're not. No. All right. Rena?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
I went to the driving range the other day and I was thinking how you start out with a big bucket of golf balls and you just start hitting away carelessly. You have dozens of them. Each individual ball means nothing, so you just hit. One ball gone is practically inconsequential when subtracted from your bottomless bucket. There are no practice swings or technique reevaluations after a bad shot because so many more tries remain. Yet eventually you have to reach down towards the bottom of the bucket to scavenge for another shot, and you realize that tries are running out. Now with just a handful left, each swing becomes more meaningful. The right technique becomes more crucial. So between each shot, you take a couple of practice swings and a few deep breaths. There is a very strong need to end on a good note. Even if every preceding shot was horrible, getting it right at the end means a lot. You know, as you tee up your last ball, this is my final shot. I want to crush this with perfection. I must make this count. Limited quantities of limited time brings a new precious value and significance to anything you do. Live every day shooting as if it's your last shot. I know I have to. I found out today 5-year survival rates are just 30%.
This is a very mature realization from a 16-year-old. And he passed away 2 years later. But look, he left a legacy. He's able to inspire us with his book. But do you know, like in economics, there's the concept of supply and demand. So when there's the more limited the supply, the higher the price, right? The more limited the supply and the higher the demand. So the same thing is with our time. The more we realize that our time is limited in supply, then the value of it goes up. So life is too short to hold grudges against people. When you think about it from this perspective, you know, life is too short to worry. So exercise 6.3, allowing yourself a moment to contemplate between each response. Try to finish the sentence following the statement, life is too short to. Life is too short to what? To what?
Like a mushroom.
To stuff a mushroom.
Life is too short to hold grudges or to be angry.
To be angry. Yeah. So that's a very powerful, it's powerful to think about it because, holding a grudge, they say it's like giving, or they say it about resentment, holding a resentment against someone, it's like giving that person rent-free space in your mind.
Yeah.
So why would you do that? Okay, now there's a very, it's a very famous parable, which is called Diamond Island, which really brings out this idea as well. So here's a story for you. There was, in Hebrew, they call it a lo yutzlach. A lo yutzlach means, or in Yiddish, the word is shlamazel. You know what that means? A good for nothing. Not a good for nothing, but someone who just has bad luck. So in Hebrew, they call it a lo yutzlach. In Yiddish, they call it a shlamazel. Someone that everything he touches turns sour. Some people, everything they touch turns gold. Some people, everything they touch just goes sour. So his name was Shmerel, and he was a lo yutzlach. Everything he tried, every business endeavor he did, he bought crypto right when the day before it went down, and he tried it, he started a business, and then everything he did just didn't go. And his family, his wife and children were obviously suffering. They didn't have any money. Till finally he gets this a letter in the mail that says that, in modern days, you get an email from someone from Nigeria that's some sort of scam that says, hey, you've won the lottery. So are you going to believe it or not? So he got a letter in the mail that said that there is an island somewhere far from the ocean called Diamond Island, where in this island, there are infinite amount of diamonds. You can just go there and collect diamonds. All you need to do is just pay for the voyage, pay for the trip there. Once you get there, you can collect diamonds. So, first he's thinking, yeah, it's just like everything else I do, it's going to obviously fail. But after a while, he's a bit desperate. He turns to his wife. He's like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. Let me try it out. So his wife pawns the last things that they have in the house to get some money to pay for the trip. And he goes on the boat and he starts traveling out into the ocean. And they get closer and closer to Diamond Island. And all of a sudden he starts seeing shining things. It's real. It's true. He gets the boat pulls up at the shore. And lo and behold, he gets on the beach and he sees the beach is covered with diamonds. And he starts taking and stuffing up his tattered suit, all the pockets with diamonds, and till they're sort of coming out, till the pockets are bulging, and then he goes to his back pocket, sticks some in his shoes, till he can't do it anymore. He's tired from the journey. He feels good about all the diamonds. He's hungry. So he walks into the island. And he's like, this is paradise. And he looks for the nearest restaurant. He goes to the restaurant. No problem, doesn't look at the price, Michelin star, 5-star. He says, give me the most expensive wines and the most expensive food. No problem. And the waiter comes and gives him a whole menu. He eats to his heart's desire. When it comes time to pay, the waiter gives him the bill. And he says, not a problem. He pulls out a dime and he says, here, this is surely enough to cover the bill. Keep the change. And the waiter looks at him and is like, excuse me? What are you giving me? Some stones? There's nothing. So he's like, what do you mean? Diamonds worth a lot. The waiter's like, no, in this island, diamonds are plentiful. You can have as many of them as you want. They're worthless. So he's like, oh my gosh. So then tell me, what's the currency in this over here, if not diamonds? So the waiter says, over here in this island, the currency is what's called schmaltz. You know what schmaltz is? It's a Yiddish word. It means fish fats. Why? Because chicken fats. Because chicken fats.
Oh, okay.
Because chickens are very rare in the island, and chicken fat is the sort of the prize that's what used. If you speak to your grandmother who made food in the baba, they used the chicken fat is what makes it very tasty. In fact, we use chicken fats on Passover for our cooking. Anyway, so the guy.
With Gobelach or without.
What's grobelach?
It's little fried chicken skin.
Yes.
Makes it a bit of crunch.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what we use. So anyway, so he's like, okay, well, how am I going to pay my bill? So the waiter says, let me ask my manager. Manager comes like, okay, you have to come and work in the kitchen for a few hours to pay off your bill. So he goes to the kitchen and he starts washing the dishes. And the first thing he's ever done in his life that he was successful, he managed to do a job and he paid off his bill. And they said, okay, you know what? You got a job here, you can stay. And slowly but surely he works his way up from being the dishwasher to eventually becomes the chef. And he works his way up the ladder till before you know it, he becomes the owner of the restaurant itself. And then he starts branching off into real estate. He starts buying other restaurants. And, you know, a year or two later, he's one of the wealthiest people on the island. He's accumulated massive amount of chicken fats. And he takes his chicken fats and he has them in a vault with, you know, with a freezer, like an underground fridge to keep them nice and fresh. And they're locked with a vault. And he becomes this wealthy man. A couple, you know, after a while goes by, he says, you know, it's time to go back to my family. They're waiting for me. So he's so excited and he built up his self-esteem. He's so proud of himself. He sells off all of his assets and he buys as much chicken fat as he could. And he takes everything and he puts it on a boat and he starts sailing back home. And on the boat, there's no refrigeration. So the chicken fat start to stink. By the time he gets back home, it's a really bad smell. He sends a telegram to his family, say, I'm going to be home in 2 days. Come to greet me at the shore. And when he comes, they're waiting and expecting diamonds. And he comes and they start hearing the smell. Like, well, what is this? So he's like, what do you mean? Chicken fats. So like, where's the diamonds? So he laughs at them. He's like, what, diamonds? Diamonds is worthless on the island. And then all of a sudden it sinks and he realizes the mistake that he made. Anyways, he starts unpacking and he finds somewhere dug underneath in his suitcases the old suit that he wore on the day that he came to the island. There were a few diamonds left in the pockets from that day. He takes that, but luckily those diamonds were still worth a lot and was enough to keep him well off for the rest of his life. That's a parable. What's the nimshal?
Exactly. Otherwise, he would have
Yes.
asked him, what do you prefer, time or money? He would have
Right.
paid money because my time is useless.
Exactly. So what's the nimshal? Nimshal means the parable, the meaning of the parable. The soul, when it's up in heaven, that's like before we went onto the eye. The soul cannot collect diamonds, because we said only in this world we can do mitzvot, we can do good deeds. The soul in heaven, if you remember that we had the song we played, the beautiful song of the song between the dialogue between the soul and the angel, that it said he wants to give me wings to fly into the world. The soul up in heaven, it's like it doesn't have hands and feet. It can't accomplish anything. And it hears that, you know, far off there is a world called this world where you can collect diamonds. What's diamonds? Good deeds, mitzvot. And so the soul comes down into this world initially with the intention of collecting mitzvot. But then once it gets, you know, once it starts living life and it gets under the influence of other people, and people say, nah, you know, let's collect shema, let's collect the chicken fats, let's have some fun, let's indulge in pleasures, and you know, the good deeds, you know, we'll save that for another time. And we get a bit sidetracked in our life. We forget about the diamonds. We forget about collecting the diamonds. But every person, you know, throughout our life, we do some good things, right? We all end up doing some good things. And those good things are at the end what really matters the most. So the point of the parable is basically about remembering what really matters, which is the diamonds. So,
Diamonds are forever.
yeah, so we have the soul enters this world with a mission to collect diamonds, but it's hard to remember the diamonds when everyone else is busy with schmaltz. So now, from here, we move on to the next section, which is talking about retirement. I'm going to do this one very quickly because of the time. It's talking about the golden years. So the Jewish approach to retirement. In Judaism, we don't believe in retirement. Well, we do, but we don't. What does that mean? Is retirement in the sense of, okay, well, we stop being productive people to society. That is something which in Judaism we do not believe in. In text 6 is a quote where he says, whatever you're doing when you were young, continue doing when you're old. We're not going to read it inside, but there's studies that say that when people retire, more for men than for women, there tends to be many negative side effects. In other words, people have their health will drastically decline relatively to when they were working, after they retire. People, because when you're working, especially for men, it gives them a sense of purpose. And when you lose all sense of purpose, many people, I'll give you a different example. Some people, they become, wealthy in their 30s, and technically they can retire, and some people do, and they say, everything it's all to have freedom. Now I have money, I can do what I want. They sell off their business, they retire, and usually it's a very common phenomenon where a couple of years later they'll get bored of doing nothing and just going and having vacation all day. They'll come back and work, but then they'll work for not because they have to, but because they want to. There is a very beautiful verse in the Torah. It says, Adam la'amal yulad. Man was created to toil, to work hard. Yeah. Man was created to work hard, and that gives us purpose. And
spiritually or
spiritually,
physically?
Both physically and spiritually. And when people get older, because again, if you remember, I mentioned last week that God created the world incomplete. He didn't create the world to perfection because he wanted that we should be partners to creation. He wanted us to come and fix something, and then by doing that, we become a partner in creation, which is the greatest gift. Now, when people get older, sometimes we have to shift gears. So when our physical strength is no longer our greatest asset, but then it can shift to other things. For example, experience. Older people have more life experience, and that is something which they can then turn to mentoring and teaching and volunteering and those sort of things. But the idea of continuing to contribute to society should never end until the day we die. So here is text 8.
No, so brainwashing.
Brainwashing? Okay. So retirement increases the likelihood of physical health decline, mental health decline. Elderly could be a gift to society through volunteering, mentoring, and studying Torah. You have more time on your hands after you're retired, you can study Torah. It says here, a very powerful text from the Talmud on page text 8. And we're going to go back around. So Miriam, unless someone else's thing is working. Paul, did you sort out your volume, your sound? Last time we were able to hear you. We can't hear you? No? All right. Deborah, did you sort out your connection? Is Yael here? The Yael is going on here.
Yeah, I'll read.
Cyril, text 8. Page 223. From the Talmud and Megillah.
If the elders advise you to distract and the youth to construct, heed the counsel of the elders, because distraction upon the advice of the elders is constructive, and construction upon the advice of the youth is destructive.
It's a very sort of extreme statement, but it's saying is if you have two people giving you an opinion, one is a young person and one is an old person. So the Talmud says, listen to what the old people say. Even if they tell you to destroy something and the young people tell you to build, listen to the advice of the old people because their wisdom has some truth in it. And this goes back actually to back into times of King Solomon, who was the king of the whole Israel, 12 tribes. And then after he passed away, his son Rechavam became the next king, and he was sort of a young king, and he didn't have the credibility that his father, King Solomon, had. King Solomon, he charged the people pretty high taxes, right? So when King Rechavam, he didn't know what to do, so he asked two people for advice, the younger advisors and the older ones. The younger advisors told him, you should, so first he went to the older advisors, and they said, you should charge lower taxes than your father did because, your father, he had the credibility to do it. People listen, but when you do it, you have to first build up the goodwill. So you should actually first lower the taxes, and then eventually, you can raise it. The younger people said, no, the contrary. You have to assert your power. So you should raise the taxes even more than your father did. He ended up listening to his father, and that led to the... What? Yeah, exactly, right? And that led to the kingdom being divided. So the 12 tribes where they ended up sort of rebelling, and the 10 tribes, he lost all the whole northern kingdom, and he only became the king of Judea, which is today Judea, right? The two tribes of, and eventually it led to all of that. So that's just a story of how listening to the, young versus the old. So that's what we're saying is that basically older people, what happens is when you retire, the word retire comes from retire. You have to put on your tire. You take off the old tires, you put on new tires. You change the gears. So instead of doing this, you do that, but you don't stop doing. You never stop doing. In fact, there's a very beautiful.
The root of the word doesn't work in English.
I know, yeah. There's a very beautiful talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he turned 70. Some very well-meaning supporters wrote a letter to the Rebbe saying that he should, wind things down a bit, slow down because they were concerned for the Rebbe's health. When the Rebbe's birthday, which is actually 4 days before Passover, the Rebbe every year gave a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe gave a really fiery talk, and he spoke about how in Judaism we don't believe in retirement, and he said, not only am I not going to retire, I'm going to double down and do even more. And he said, in honor of my 70th birthday, I'm going to start 70 new institutions. And his 80th, he went on and did the same. So this is really the Jewish approach to retirement. Now, with the last section over here is actually, we're going to talk about sort of wrapping up everything that we learned. See, up until now, we took death as the inevitable thing. And it was just we were learning about, why death and how death, but death happens to everyone, right? We're going to eventually die. But now it's becoming a more trendy thing with AI, of course, right? About people trying to figure out how to live forever, right? And there's this crazy guy in California. Do you know what I'm talking about?
A German guy with a blonde hair.
Is he German? Yeah.
I think he's German, but
he's
California.
He's basically on a mission to try to live forever, and he's wealthy. He made a big company in Venmo, right? He sold his company, and he takes all his money. He does the most crazy experiments. His whole house is like a science lab, and he uses his own body as an experiment to really try to figure out how to maximize in lifespan. His name slipped my mind.
Yeah, I know of a few.
Yeah?
He had an accounting company. And then
Maybe we're talking about someone else.
No, I think it's the same.
Yeah. Venmo. He sold Venmo. Venmo is an American like PayPal. It's like PayPal, a big company. The name slipped my mind, but he has a YouTube channel. He shares his studies and the stuff that he does. Anyway, so now we're going to learn what Judaism has to say about that. Is death? Why death is a creation of God? What was death meant to be? Or is maybe death really one big mistake? So if you go back to the very beginning of creation, God's created Adam and Eve. And the story of the first sin was eating from the tree of life. So so who else is here? Monique, do you want to read text 9a?
Monique's not there.
Oh,
She's not there.
not there. Okay. Miriam, did you read again?
Yeah. God commanded man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For on the day that you eat from it, you will certainly die.
Is that what happened? Did they die after they ate?
No.
So was God just, was God just giving empty threats?
It's about the certainty, isn't it? You will know that you will die.
Or in other words,
Symbolic?
the day that you will eat, you will become mortal. Meaning before they ate from it, the initial plan was he was supposed to live forever. But once he ate from it, now you're going to eventually die. You're going to be destined to die, which is what happened. So continue the next one, 9b.
By the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, for you were taken from it. For you are dust, and you will return to dust.
So that was part of his punishment, was that eventually he's going to die. You're going to return to dust. But that's not the way it was supposed to be. Initially, he was supposed to live forever. As a punishment for the sin, he said, now you're going to have to die. But once that sin is fully rectified, then go on, Yaron, read text 10.
God will eradicate death forever and wipe the tears of every face.
So meaning when death is only a punishment for the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, but once that sin is fully repaired and rectified, then we go back to the way it's meant to be, and we're going to live forever. That's when Mashiach comes, we're going to then live forever. And God will eradicate death from the face of earth. So this is a very interesting thing to sort of unpack and understand what this means. Why was he initially supposed to live forever? Why was then death the punishment for eating the tree of knowledge? How do we rectify? How does this whole thing make sense? So Kabbalah explains the whole thing. Before, what happened when he ate from the tree of knowledge? He ingested evil. Before that, he had only a soul, and his body was an extension of his soul. And the whole idea of bad only existed externally in the serpent, in the Nachash, and in the tree by being told not to eat from the tree. So therefore, he can live forever. However, once he eats that now, he has the bad inside of him. If he's going to live forever, then it means evil will live forever, and that can't be. So therefore, he has to die. So we are defining death as the separation of body and soul. When you die, your soul and your body separate. Okay? That is how we're defining physical death.
Did the snake have 2 heads?
2 heads? No.
1 head?
The snake was upright and had feet and was able to talk. It was kind of like maybe where the dinosaurs come from.
One head?
What?
1 head?
Yeah. So just to explain to you a little bit.
It's important because the sign of the medical,
Yes, yeah,
2 heads.
of the Red Cross.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not sure where that comes from.
Not only.
So before, this is what the Kabbalah explains. I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell. Before man did the sin, his soul and body were in sync, which means to say the body was an extension of the soul. In other words, the body didn't have its own ego. Whatever the soul wanted, the body did. They worked together hand in hand. It was like one thing. As soon as they committed the sin, now all of a sudden, the body got its own, that's why it's called Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge of good and bad. The body all of a sudden got its own identity, its own self-consciousness, its own awareness, which is, by the way, the reason why after they ate from the tree, they felt ashamed that they were naked. Beforehand, they were not ashamed because everything, it was just an extension of the soul. The body was just like a vessel, it was like holding a hammer to bang a nail. The body was just there to be part of serving God. Like little toddlers walk around naked and they don't have any shame. That's the way they were before the sin. But afterwards, all of a sudden now the body got a sense of consciousness, of self-awareness, of ego, and of identity, which can have its own aspirations and ideas and pleasures, which are not necessarily in sync with the soul anymore. So this is already the beginning of the diversion of the body and soul, where the body and soul are now have different ideas, different wants and desires. That's what we call spiritual death. And therefore, physical death is the ultimate sort of manifestation from spiritual death. The sin was spiritual death, where the body all of a sudden became separated from the soul in a spiritual sense, in a sense of having different desires and different, having its own ego. And therefore, that led to physical death, which is again where the body and soul separate, where the soul leaves the body. Now, how do we rectify for the sin? How do we fix the sin? Last week we spoke about how, through the reincarnation, we need to rectify. How do we rectify for the sin, the premortal sin? The answer is very simple, by doing the opposite of what he did, by reuniting the body and soul of each thing, bringing them back together for united purpose. So like going back to what we spoke about in the beginning of the lesson, when you're going fishing, but you're doing it for a more spiritual reason, you're bringing back body and soul to be united. When you eat, when you go out and make a living, but you do it with a purpose to support your family, to be able to do, do what you have to do. You're not just doing it for pleasure or just for its own purpose. When you're eating to be healthy, to have energy, to be able to go and do good things, what you're doing, but then we're doing that, we're bringing the soul and body back together. When we all do that for the world at large, that is the general rectification for the sin of the tree of knowledge. When that happens, that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Then we will no longer have to die because the soul and the body will be reunited back together. So that's the Kabbalistic explanation, okay, so that before the sin, the body is selfless and the body has no ego. The body's only desire is to do the will of God. There's no conflict of interest between the body and the soul. After the sin, body and soul become misaligned. The body has its own ego and consciousness, and it has its own source of selfish desires, and the body can potentially go against God's will. So therefore, death is the separation of the body and the soul. And spiritual death is when the body and soul are separated because they have misaligned values and desires. So how do we rectify that? By bringing them back together. Everything has a body and a soul. The thing's physical dimensions, like the texture and the physical aspect of it, is the body, and the true purpose of each thing is the soul. The food's physical properties, like the taste and the smell and the appearance and the texture, that's the body of the food. The soul is the ability that the food has to sustain us, to nourish us, and to provide energy. So when we're eating, are we focusing only on the taste of the food, that it should taste good? Not saying that's not important, but is that the only focus? Or are you also focusing on the fact that we want it to have a spiritual purpose, to nourish us and to provide energy? We rectify spiritual death when we value something not only for its external properties, but for its ultimate purpose, that why it was created. And that is what's going to lead to the resurrection of the dead, which is the actualization and the rethinking of the body and the soul, the ultimate purpose of creation. So we've done that a bit quick, but that's a very fascinating idea. So when Mashiach will come, the ultimate answer to death is not to explain why we die, but to actually get rid of it altogether. So it's a bit of like a plot twist. So the whole course we were talking about death and the afterlife and why we die and how to view death and how to mitigate the fear of death. But now we're saying ultimately the ultimate goal is to get rid of death entirely. And that will happen when Mashiach comes.
Lesson 6.
Any questions?
Too many.
Too many. Yeah. So what's your most burning question?
Well, it isn't really a question. I'm struggling to put all of this together into a holistic picture of what's happening with that poor soul of ours. Because the first maybe 4 lessons, it went well together. It's kind of worked, and we just moved a little bit further up the ladder. But with the last 2 lessons, I struggle to understand how they work together, what we talked about in the first 4 lessons, and
Right.
in these last 2.
Because on one hand, we're saying that the soul goes to heaven and the soul lives on.
Gehenna, and then we've got every time someone says Kaddish, it goes another stage, it goes another stage. But it's not even there because there is sparks that's gone in there. It's like it's a splitting soul and it's going different places. And then is there still a soul left in heaven? Is there still the bits of soul that left in Gehenna that need to do? Because all of this, it's all the good bits are climbing up and up and up in heaven, and the bad bits in Gehenna, and then the human.
It's like DNA.
But actually, all the stuff that cannot purify by Gehenna is actually gone back to a different. So it's just getting a bit too much for.
It's specifically. So if I'm correct, it's specifically last week of reincarnation that makes it a little complicated, and I can understand why, because it's like almost like now we have like multiple lives and multiple souls, and some of it is there, some of it is there, and it's a bit hard to like think of the whole thing. Where am I after? Right now, there's just one me. But after I die, where is that me going to be?
Yeah.
Right? So I think with DNA, it's like, I think that's the best way to understand it, because like one drop of DNA can really encompass within it the whole person, right? The whole body. It can be encapsulated into one little bit of DNA. So the soul also, when we say that the soul is, so to say, splitting, it doesn't mean that now the soul is only half. Because again, it's in spiritual things, it's not like an apple where you cut an apple in half and then, now you only have half of the apple. Imagine an apple, but each time you cut it in half, it's still whole. That's what it would be more accustomed to. So it's still, the soul is whole, and another soul will also be whole, which comes back into the world. But the you is the soul that stays in heaven. The other one is sort of, it's almost like when you give birth to a child, right? So that child, it says in the Talmud, it says Bura Kara Davua, which literally means that a child is like a leg, like a leg or a thigh of the parent, meaning to say your child is basically an extension of you. It's like another limb of your body, right? So the question is, who is me? Is it me? Is the child its own identity, or is the child an extension of me? Right? But it's really both. So the soul also, right? It's like your soul gives birth to another soul, which comes back into the world to finish the job, but it doesn't mean that you've become less.
That's a brilliant example, because I didn't understand what's the soul, how it can be in certain places, but
it's hard. I mean, I'm not claiming that I'm not claiming that I understand all of this, because these are.
I didn't understand, but
right
from you to your kids, yeah,
right,
absolutely.
So these are quite the whole concept of reincarnation. Actually, it was really debated in the initial rabbis. It wasn't all accepted by everyone initially. Before Kabbalah became more mainstream, some rabbis objected to it. But eventually, once the Arizal, the times of Arizal, the idea of Gilgul, but eventually it became fully accepted as fact. But it's something which is a little bit more woo-woo. Who? The Rambam? Could be. We mainly spoke from the Arizal. So anyways, we'll do the summary. And then after that, if you don't mind to stay for one extra minute, I'd love to just go around the table and all those on Zoom to I would love to, for anyone who wants to share as we're closing up the course, just to share anything that you want. What's something, a thought or a takeaway or something interesting that you learned or take away from this course?
Last week you said that the Leviim were never slaves.
Yeah, in Egypt.
But they were slaves to God.
Well.
I thought.
Okay.
Lesson 6. Life is short-ish. 1. Our exploration of death and the afterlife through the Torah's lens reduces our fear and unease, allowing us to consider our mortality without panic. 2. Some believe that because we eventually die, nothing is overly important. But Judaism insists that because we die, each moment of life is of supreme importance and should be devoted to matters of eternal relevance. Considering our mortality motivates us to focus on what really matters. 3. Our natural illusion of immortality spurs us to consider time as dispensable. We care more about wasted money than wasted time. Reflecting on life's finitude replaces this illusion with an urgency to take advantage of each moment. 4. We are designed to be productive beings. Retirement is not a Jewish concept. As our brute powers wane, we should transition to mentoring, sharing our wisdom and experience, etc. 5. Before the sin of the tree of knowledge, the body was the soul's extension, and their desires were synced. Sin destroyed that dynamic, causing spiritual death, the misalignment of body and soul. Physical death is an outgrowth of spiritual death. 6. We rectify spiritual death by realigning everything with its purpose, ignoring the superficial layers of a thing, its body, and instead focusing on its inner truth and purpose, soul. Upon completing this rectification, physical death will no longer be part of the human condition.
Are we going to see the meditation? or-
Would you like to? You want to? Yeah, you want to stay for another 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah, no, I could find it. Hope my thing will manage to. This is from Steve Jobs. There's another interesting one. I can share it after. It's about him speaking very powerful speech about the power of being true to yourself and utilizing every minute. Sorry.
You also got a reminder, huh? The very rich people hold the family.
What?
All the very rich people can't hold the family.
Yes.
For our meditation reflection for this final lesson of the Journey of the Soul course, we're going to take a meditation straight from our sages, from Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, which tells us to meditate upon 3 things. Imagine, if you will, that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all of your deeds are written in a book. Now, that's something that for centuries would have taken imagination. But in our day and age, it doesn't take any imagination at all, because we know that everything is seen, heard, and recorded. What we're going to do now is imagining ourselves at the end of our lives in the editing room, so to speak, with all the footage, all of the film, all of the recordings, every moment of our lives. It's there for review, to rewatch, to relive. Imagine yourself now looking back through your life, watching the real-time movie of every single second. See yourself in every place where you've been, every person you've ever met, even if you passed them in an elevator for 5 seconds. And now, let's start to edit and form our highlight film. And of course, what does a highlight film mean? Now that the soul has left the body, the highlights are not which restaurants I ate at or where I went on vacation. The soul now has moved on from a body. The highlights are, what good did I do in this world? Who did I love? Who did I help? Start to imagine your life. Start to reflect on the real highlight film. Those small fleeting moments that were over in seconds, but last forever. Who did you affect? Who did you help? How did you make the world a better place? And now realize that we're not editing just yet. We're still filming. We're still making the movie. Imagine yourself now, you're still filming the movie. Visualize it. You're in the director's chair. What scene will you direct? We'll take a moment to visualize and reflect.
Thank you very much, Avi. That was a beautiful gift because that was very powerful. I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding us. But we're still, we get to choose. We still have the chance to choose the things that are going to count in the highlight reel later. That's beautiful. Okay, so let me stop the share. Stop the